All right, this is our next episode of True Wrestling Fan Discussions. Continuing our Dark Side of the Ring review series. I'm your host, Mike.
I'm Frank, and welcome back, Dark Side of the Ring. This
Yeah,
is the opening segment of the second half. Damn, we've missed
cover-
you.
covering the plane ride from hell.
There's a couple episodes that are coming up in this second half, and this was one of the ones I was most intrigued on wanting to see. That, and of course, the one they're closing out the season with the steroid trials. But
Yeah.
this,
Oh, the
this
steroid trial is gonna be epic.
that exactly. And
Um,
this was the other one that was my personal favorite to touch on because I was, we heard about this
mhm.
in 2002. Again, the internet wasn't, you couldn't get all the information from there like, social media is now. So we were always wondering what really happened that plane ride in May of 2002 because you hear various stories over the years and it was just like, what was going on? So now we have
We have the answers.
most of the informative stuff
Yeah.
we need. Well, as you saw, the show started out with them showing that Vince purchased ECW, they purchased WCW in 2001, so all the competition was gone. They had a plethora of talent coming in from both companies.
Hmm.
So you had more guys that are trying to get ring time and air time and whatnot. Um, they went in May of 2002. They went on a European tour, um, and it was capped off by the Insurrection pay per view. And so some of the guys on the flight that behaved themselves, Austin, Taker, Nash, and then there were guys like Hall, Flair, Lesnar, Kurt Hennig, Terry, yada yada yada. Vince and JR were also on
Yeah.
there, amongst others. They interviewed. You saw they interviewed the flight attendant
Yeah.
from pretty much most of this episode.
Hmm.
Heidi Doyle.
And, and
She
she
was the
and she was one of the only flight. There were multiple flight attendants, from what I understand. And she was
yeah.
the only one that agreed to be interviewed. The other ones didn't want anything to do with the documentary. So
I mean, I'm not saying what she said, during all this was fabricated in any way, but it would have been helpful if somebody else came forward. But I mean, I can understand they don't want to bring this up.
yeah.
And again, I'm not saying what she said was fabricated in any way. Um, and this particular Boeing 757, I mean, this was one of those high dollar ones. They leather seats, carpeting, um, I mean, it had I think they said 50 leather seats. The carpeting they even the first class was pretty much this entire
Yeah,
plane.
the whole plane. It was basically one giant first class plane that they
And this is
private charter.
this is unheard of Vince McMahon to kind of do this for them. I guess it was kind of a sell. They done such a good job. I guess he's trying
Hmm.
to reward them, and this is
And they're
what they
coming
go
from
ahead and
and they're
do.
coming they're coming from Europe, so it's a long flight. So they wanted everyone to be like comfortable and
Yeah, in a
uh,
nutshell. So anyway, uh, she started talking about how Ric Flair was very conversational with all of the flight attendants, and which she didn't think was creepy, just odd. But Flair was, I guess, always outgoing and whatnot. So their first stop was Germany on the tour. They talked about that. And what's funny is she had said that some of the flight attendants and even the wrestlers had said this had some of them were partying with the wrestlers even
right.
back at the hotel,
Mhm.
so they were constantly with them during this
Right.
tour. By the time they got to London, which was the final stop on the tour, that was the Insurrection pay per view. And what's funny is, and let me just stay on the Insurrection pay per view because something was brought up later that kind of goes back to this pay per view, and that was Terry Runnels stating that Brock Lesnar exposed himself to her. And of course, they didn't get a statement from Brock on this. There was no response from Brock Lesnar on this. So again, did it happen? I don't know. There's no telling. But Dustin Rhodes, her ex-husband, Goldust, told her in their term, "Don't sell it," which means leave it alone.
Right.
I actually like that phrase, "Don't sell it."
And no
It's
cell.
pretty
Yeah.
true. Yeah. So I don't know. I want to say that I don't know. What was your opinion on this? Because I don't know what to make of this.
I don't know, man. It's a tough one. I mean, she's saying that it happened, but he didn't get Brock's side of the story,
Exactly.
and I think Jr. said that he never heard that, right?
Yeah,
That
but
was
well,
never
it didn't go beyond Terry and Dustin because again,
right.
like he told her, let it be. So again, I don't know.
I don't
There's
know.
never been an
Hold on.
instance come forth on Brock Lesnar since then or before that. So I don't know.
All I know is she dated New Jack,
Yeah.
so you could just take that for what it's worth, and we'll move on.
Okay. All right. We'll move it on. So in any event, they had the Insurrection pay per view and it rocked out. I remember I watched that. It was very decent show that they had there. Now the flight home was delayed pretty much in Connecticut. This is what delayed them, not so much the weather there. They were delayed on the tarmac for 7 hours.
7 hours, yeah.
Maron, this would drive anybody nuts. And the fact that you're letting them stay on the plane with the liquor cart.
Yep.
This is a red flag right there.
It's a recipe for disaster, is what it is.
Exactly. And what I was smirking about while watching this was that they said that the liquor cart ran out. They had to order another one. That one runs out. They order another one. That one runs out. Do we see the pattern here when we have to say maybe we should stop?
I think they said they went through 3 of them.
Yeah.
And that the wrestlers would have got to them either way. They would have gotten to.
Oh yeah, they admitted it definitely that like if you stopped us, yeah, we would have definitely gotten.
You had Justin Credible, who they interviewed,
Rob Van Dam,
Tommy Dreamer, yeah,
which is a guy that I think he was just doing this pretty much to bury WWE to away because his relationship with him is not that good to begin with ever since when he left there, but.
I mean, I don't think he buried them. I think he made himself look bad. He didn't make the company look bad because he kind of just discredited anything that happened that the girls said. He just discredited them. So he didn't necessarily bury the company. He just made himself look like very insensitive, So
I got you. And then on top of that, they had besides the booze, you got the pills. You got a lot of GHB running around the plane. And then syringes too. So I mean,
they brought it up at the end. They brought that there was some syringes found in the aisles, and
I mean, this is just you're like you said, recipe to disaster.
Yeah.
From the word jump. I mean, this, and I just don't understand why they kept ordering it at this point. Wait until the plane takes off. There were ways to avoid this. In any event.
Oh, Michael Chiesa was also there. The referee. He was also
Michael Chioda. Yes.
He was on the plane and he was Chioda, I'm sorry. And they interviewed him.
Yeah, he was explaining that how on the flight that he had his hat on and his glasses because even if you're asleep, if they try to rib you, which the guys there were known for, he at least that would wake him up if they took his stuff off and get out of the way. And I believe it was him that said you always cover your drink.
Mm-hmm.
Either him or JR.
It was JR that said you never leave your drink unattended or like just never
because they'll be dropping this stuff. And it was known to mix the GHB with alcohol to go to sleep faster or to get an ultimate high. So in any event,
they were also dropping in other people's drinks to mess with them. To shave off because if they passed out, they would shave off their eyebrows and they would do all sorts of crazy stuff. So. It was funny when this guy said, Rob Van Dam, when somebody said that it was like high school, and then Rob Van Dam was like, nah, it was more like 5th grade.
5th grade, yes.
Like in terms of the immaturity of the pranks and the stupidity.
Exactly. And meanwhile, this is all, and as I'm watching this, I keep going, okay, Vince McMahon is in first class.
But he was all the way in the front. Like he didn't know what was going on.
I don't know, man. Yeah. So
and with Linda too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they mentioned Linda was there, which again is crazy. Well, the first antic they started with was Bradshaw was sleeping, or JBL. Michael Hayes reopens his wound that he got in his match from Insurrection, and then he knocks Hayes out. So here's the first thing that we got going on.
Right. So Michael Hayes punches him, reopens the cut. He punches him for no reason apparently, And then JBL slapped him and knocked him out with a slap, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
So
and does I ever wonder why that Michael Hayes got a receipt later on that we'll talk about? I mean, does he wonder why now?
Freebirds.
Because then what it was X-Pac cut his ponytail.
Yeah.
And what's funny is I revert back to the ending because it pertains to this right here. That the next night on Raw, when they get there, somebody, and I really wish I knew who it was that did it.
It had been X-Pac.
Tacks it up to the door.
He had it in a plastic bag.
Just Jim Ross just takes it and throws it out.
It was probably X-Pac. It was probably him.
It had to be. He was the one that did it because he was over there. He got a huge pop from the boys as he's twirling it around.
But then JR said that X-Pac was like a follower. Like, he kind of did it for the acceptance of other people. He was always like that when he was running around with Sean and Razor. Yeah, the Click. And
so now, in any event, following that, now you have the prankster Kurt Hennig, the Mr. Perfect. He goes and puts shaving cream on top on Brock's head and slams it down. That's another recipe for disaster when you mess him with that big boy. So now Brock's chasing him up the aisle, grabs him, tackles him. They're breaking tables, chairs, glasses, everything. And then these two dummies, while all this is going on, hit the emergency exit door.
Yeah.
And if that thing opens, then we're all talking about them in a memorial episode.
They were saying that it's not possible to open that door like that, though, but that they were thinking that they could have gone through.
He was so big. They said, Brock was a big boy.
Right. That they could have went
possible.
They could have went through the. They said if they could go through a wall, they could go through a door. I don't know, man. It's just a scary thought. It was so scary that the wrestlers actually got involved and actually pulled them apart. The captain came out. Oh, it was nuts.
Yeah, it was.
Well, the captain. When does the captain come out? After somebody because somebody went on the intercom system, right?
Oh, Dustin we're all gonna die. Decided oh no, yeah. You're right.
Somebody went on and was screaming, "We're all gonna die." Then the pilot runs out, and
they never mentioned who got on there, but they're like, "We're all gonna die." I mean, it is scary to think about that. It just one wrong hit on that door, and you never know. And these two buffoons are over here messing around. Of course, and then Kurt Hennig spent the remaining of his time because in Impact he did this. He comes out and says, "I took Brock Lesnar down at 35,000 feet." Now, I think it was the other way, brother. At least the way they describe it here. So, in any event now, they finally settled down at this point and started to go to sleep. And then all of a sudden, here comes Dustin. Starts serenading her over the PA system. And JR was quoted to say he couldn't sing worth a lick. At least if he could sing, it was understandable.
Yeah, he was singing some song. Was it a song that they liked or something? That was like their song or something?
Yeah, because she recognized it instantly.
Yeah, she recognized. And I guess they were in the middle of a divorce. Were they? They were separated or whatever was going on.
This was around that time, yeah.
So yeah, and she was like, "Oh, she was all upset about it. It was too much." And, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know, but they got him to JR. JR got him to stop. So.
Yeah, JR tells him, "Sit down, shut up, go to sleep," and go. Dustin's like, "Okay." So that pretty much started it up again because now at this point, you got the Nature Boy doing one of his famous antics of putting his robe on nude and walking the aisle. And I didn't need them to discuss what his package looked like.
No, we're not even to repeat that.
I'm not Tommy Dreamer. Thank you very much for the nightmare tonight. Really.
Yeah, they were talking about a helicopter. He was doing a helicopter.
I thought we weren't going to talk about it.
But
if anybody watching this review is wondering if he's go watch the video, go watch the episode. Yeah, but anyway, no, I need therapy now.
So.
But with him doing this escalates into something else as he goes into the galley. Now he sees the Heidi Doyle, the flight attendant is there, and he's pushing up against her again, doing the helicopter twirl or whatever. And he asks her to touch it, and he's trying to put his hand on him, and I don't know.
I don't know. Flair
Flair said there was no truth to the
I
allegation.
mean, he's not on the episode, but apparently he denied it. And I don't.
Yeah.
But then again, if he was so inebriated, I don't know, man.
There's no telling what could have actually happened.
Right, exactly. And I don't think that girl's gonna make something like that up. And even Rob Van Dam, and Rob Van Dam even he corroborated her story, didn't he?
Yeah.
Rob Van Dam said, yeah, that he was crowding her.
Tommy Dreamer said it felt like a lifetime, but it was only a matter of like a couple of minutes.
But if it's possible. I mean, Tommy Dreamer kind of dismissed what she said. Like I said, Tommy Dreamer does not come off good in this episode.
No,
at all.
Not even when he made fun of himself at the end. But yeah, whatever.
Yeah. So eventually, I think it was Goldust, right, that got him to stop.
Yeah, Dustin tells him go. Now he tells him to go sit down.
Right.
And I mean, now at this point of the episode, we get to our favorite friend, who we thought was going to be the starter of all of this, and that being Scott Hall.
Well, and this actually confirmed a long-standing rumor, because I always wondered, I assumed that he got fired because of the plane ride from hell, but no one ever confirmed it, I believe, until this episode.
Yes, it did.
Because he got fired right after, but nobody ever said what happened. They try to say, some stories came out that Scott Hall was sleeping, or I don't know, but it confirmed that.
Oh yeah, there was a bunch of things like there was one story that said X-Pac was hired, was brought to the on the plane to babysit him during this, to make sure he didn't get out of hand. Then as soon as we get to Monday Night Raw, then we find all of a sudden Scott Hall's gone, and we didn't quite know what it was.
We didn't know. We didn't even know what happened. Right, yeah. Which sucks, because that was during the NWO, their return, and not having him there, even though he wasn't 100%, they took away from that whole. Although there was nothing to say that. I don't want to get too into the whole NWO thing again, but
gotcha.
Yeah.
So as they're close to landing, the sun's coming up. The flight attendant wakes him up to see if he wants some breakfast. And he goes and grabs her, and in the process, rips her blouse and tells her that he tries to lick her.
Yeah.
This has got to be scary for her in itself. I mean, and then he says that Kurt must have slipped something in his drink, because he had no recollection of the event whatsoever. Matter of fact, he was so inebriated that Just Incredible had to get him a wheelchair and wheel him out even had to grab his passport and everything to get him through.
Yeah, because they had to get through customs, because it was an international flight. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And JR comes over, he's like, "What the hell is this?"
He was looking at him, shaking his head, and
Just Incredible's like, "Bro, this ain't me." He's like, "I'm helping him."
And that was a 14-hour flight, like total. Yeah. If you count the 7 hours in the tarmac, I guess 7 hours in the air, and over the Atlantic Ocean, and
like the flight attendant had said, if that door had opened,
right, what are they going to do?
It would have required emergency landing. What are you going to land in the ocean?
Right, yeah. And she said that after the Scott Hall thing, she just hid the rest of the flight. She didn't serve any food, and that they were hanging on.
By this point, you've had enough.
You know what's interesting? The flight attendants that were in the front with Vince McMahon, they were fine.
Yeah, they had no idea what was going on.
Right, they had no idea, and I'm sure they were like, "Oh, it was a great flight." Right. Other than maybe hearing the intercom, they didn't.
Yeah, because I don't even think they heard any of the ruckus.
Probably not.
On. I mean, this plane is huge. If anybody's seen a Boeing 757, they're huge. So in any event, now, and on top of all of that, even before they get off the plane, now when the plane landed, Michael Hayes gets up. When he's passed out through all of this, he finds out his ponytail's gone.
Right. Yeah.
Now he's pissed off, and he's going nuts. Oh my God. Then, okay, now they're off the plane, whatnot. Now it's time for them to clean the airplane. The flight attendants refused outright to clean this thing, because you got syringes, you got vomit, you've got alcohol soaked into the rug, you got blood, you got a recipe for disaster here, and they're just like, we're not doing it. And so, whatchamacallit, I believe the company told them they had to do it, and they refused. They just outright refused. So, and then as a result of this flight, now Vince has been made aware. So Vince and JR have to sit down and come up with, okay, what are we going to do about this? because it's not only holding them accountable, it's the possible and potential lawsuits that are going to follow in this if they decided to.
Right.
So Vince's ideas was for number one, Kurt Hennig is fired. Scott Hall is fired. They told him they brought him onto the road too soon. He needed to go home. And that's a real shame. Well, I mean, it's not a real shame considering what he did, according to the flight attendant, but I mean, he had his role in this. Now Dustin was fined.
Because of JR. Because of JR. JR is the one who made that call. He's the one who decided.
I mean, the worst thing they said he did besides the PA was use the pouch on the seat for his straw.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much the two things he did. And when they asked JR about what about Ric Flair, he said they didn't touch him because he was a made guy. And that makes it sound like we're in a mafia here.
You know what's strange about that though? This was Ric Flair 2002. Mm-hmm. It's not Ric Flair circa 1992. So I don't know how Ric Flair was untouchable and he was a made guy at that point. If anything,
he was back mainly because WCW was out of business.
Right, and at that point, they weren't really doing much with him. It was the one that revitalized him, and we're not going to get too into this, but it was when he went into Evolution with Triple H, pretty much.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right.
Prior to that, I mean,
just a couple of feuds that he had. I mean, he was only back now 5 months when this fight happened. So
yeah, I don't know how he, but
his biggest match when he was back was an Undertaker WrestleMania. So I don't understand.
Well, that was probably the worst of anything that happened was Flair.
Yes, exactly.
So I don't know.
So I don't know how he
survived that one
from that. Mm-hmm. So let me just correct the flight attendant. SportsJet actually told them to let it be the plane. I guess they were waiting to see. You know, they left it to show pretty much what was happening in case anything was going to follow. So SportsJet was the one that told them don't bother cleaning it. So now eventually WWE reaches an agreement because she was wondering if she should follow suit. Even her husband had told her, let it be. Actually, he didn't tell her don't sell it. That would have been cool.
Right.
But he said don't go public with this.
Well, the company kind of they didn't want them to go public because of the contracts that they had with a lot of sports teams and stuff like that.
Yeah. And
so if that could potentially hurt them, because a lot of stuff happens on those crazy private planes, private flights, so
probably not as crazy as this.
Probably not as bad as this. Probably nobody's worse than wrestlers, but yeah. So but then they ended up doing an out of court, I guess, out of the settlement.
Yeah, which I mean, money's not going to make it whole because she said it's still to this day it bothers her everything that had happened when she's on a flight trying to get money for her newborn at the time.
Yeah.
So I mean, this was just a chaotic. No wonder that's why they call it plane ride from hell. And now we know the entire story of what exactly transpired, and it took us 19 years to find out. Because again, when this story broke back then, we were all curious what exactly happened.
We had heard the stories. I felt bad for JR though, man. JR was like a parent, that was just so disappointed and like just you could just see in his face and his tone of voice.
Especially the next night at Raw when they were like, "Hey, JR, what?"
Right.
Like
right.
I don't want to talk to anybody right now after this.
Yeah.
That's when they showed him the ponytail, and he's like, "You know what? Throw it out. I'm done. We're moving past this."
Yeah.
And he had to do the dirty work because, like he said, the guy that cashes the checks has the last say. I'm the guy that's got to deliver the message, and that couldn't be easy for him either.
No, he was in a really bad spot. He was in a really bad spot. And then at the end of the episode, Tommy Dreamer was just like he didn't care. He was just like, what did he say? Oh, she shouldn't have taken the settlement then.
She should have filed a lawsuit. That's Tommy Dreamer. No, then he's like, I'm sure I'm upsetting somebody right now with my two ponytails, but you know what? I'm 50 years old. I'm lucky. I'm happy I have hair. Okay, and your career is an embarrassment now because you look like you can barely wrestle. You're still doing it in Impact from time to time as well as the independent scene. I mean, whatever, dude.
I don't know. Maybe he knows. Maybe
listen.
Maybe he knows something we don't know. I don't know. He just didn't. To me, in this documentary, he didn't come off good at all. But
no,
So that's the plane ride from hell. What's next week on Dark Side?
Chris Canyon.
That's gonna be an interesting episode.
It is.
So you guys, let us know what you think about the plane ride from hell. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and we'll see you guys soon.
Take care.